Shalom, shalom. How we doing out there? Hope everybody's taking care of themselves and keeping their bodies intact as we still kind of face with this COVID stuff slightly. I'm going to get into this children lesson. Today's topic is King Ahab versus Benhadad, which is the king of Syria, right? Sorry about that. Let me do something real quick. All right, Ahab versus King Benhadad. All right, but first we're going to get off into these 10 commandments. Okay. Let me work some things out here. If y'all can, let me know how our sound is, please. For those that's watching us, let me know how our sound is. All right, I'm gonna go ahead. If y'all have any issues hearing, let me know and I'll make some adjustments. All right, so I'm gonna go into these 10 commandments. All right. So you shall have no other gods before me. You shall have no other gods before me. Things that can be considered another god is, first of all, anything that you put your effort into in serving more than the Most High. So sports can become your god. Another person can become your god. You can be your own god. You know what I mean? Like that, if you decide to do things and serve yourself more than doing things for the Most High, at that point, that becomes idolatry. All right? Some of the things that's on this chart, you have money, you have fame, power, all right? Money, of course, people will do anything to have money in their pockets, and anything that's immoral, like selling drugs, like stealing, all things that goes against the Most High, okay? Those things can be considered another god. We have to be careful. All right, some things that we may think is right because we don't truly know right from wrong, we'll end up committing idolatry if we're not careful. This is why it's very important for us to know the law, statutes, and commandments of the Most High so that we can see evil. All right, so you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an idol. All right, you should not make for yourself an idol. So this is still dealing with idolatry. But this is mainly dealing with, carving an idol and then bowing down to it. Okay, carving an idol and then bowing down to it. All right, so, and when you read out of the scriptures, it goes more in depth in saying that we shall not make anything, whether it represents heaven or in the earth or in the water under the earth, which is the sea. And anything, a fish head is not good to wear. You see people wearing Jesus pieces, and you see people which would, I guess, signify something coming out of heaven. Jesus pieces, sun, moon, anything that's in heaven, any animals that's in the earth. So anything that represents heaven, earth or in the waters under the earth. We should not look to serve those, or make them up as an idol as well. All right. Let's move on. You shall not misuse the name of Yahuwah your Elohim. You shall not misuse the name of Yahuwah your Elohim. This is a woman that is cussing somebody out in traffic, like road rage. But that law is not really talking about that. Of course, we don't want to misuse the Most High's name at all right? Or to use it in a negative light. But what the scriptures is actually talking about is things like making a vow. We make a vow in Yah's name and not uphold it. Or we swear in his name, swear that something is true in his name and it's not true, right? So if we trying to convince our friends, like, you know, this is true, this thing that I'm describing to you is true, and I swear in Yahuwah's name that it is. If you do that and it's false, now you bring in the Most High's name to nothing, because the Most High is the truth, okay? And his name is not to be defiled, so we're not to misuse his name. All right, next, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. Ways we can keep the Sabbath day holy: come and congregate. You come and congregate amongst a holy assembly on the Sabbath day. All right, you can rest, you can read your Bible. All right, which you, of course, if you come amongst the assembly, that's something you'll be doing. You can praise the Most High. All right, praise music. You can pray to the Most High. Get into some serious prayer, because it's supposed to be a day of rest from work. A day of rest from work. All right, so we're supposed to be resting from work and from worldly activities, and we're supposed to be giving our reverence to the Most High on this holy day. Okay, you can watch movies, anything that pertain to the scriptures, any stories that pertain to scriptures, or cartoons, anything, as long as it's dealing with the Most High, it will be that would be considered righteous and honoring the day that he set apart as the Shabbat day. All right, moving along. Honor your father and your mother, so that you may live long in the land Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you. So honor your father and your mother, right? Honor your father. How can we honor our father and mother? Listening to the instructions, giving them gifts. You want to keep them with a good name overall. Now, how can you keep them with a good name? Of course, you go out and be on your best behavior once you amongst your friends, once you amongst other adults. Because when you misbehave, especially like in school, for example, if you go to school and you misbehave, what happens? The teachers usually look at who's raising you. And so they ultimately want to talk to your parents. All right, so when you start misbehaving, they write you up, they send you home, and then now your parents have to bring you back to school. And if your parents haven't raised you in the right way, it usually shows because they're not living right. All right, unfortunately, but that's not your fault. But when we talk about you upholding and keeping your parents with a good name, you go wherever you are and be on your best behavior. All right, you want to be on your best behavior, and you want to represent your parents. You are an extension of your parents, meaning that when you leave your house, you are representing them. You are showing that they sent you out to be on your best behavior. They sent you out, and they taught you things at home, and they taught you how to behave, rather. All right. Next, you shall not murder. You shall not murder. All right, I'm going to give an example. So if somebody breaks into your house with the intention to steal, and they come into your house and you catch them and they do you bodily harm to the point where you die, that is considered murder, because the intentions was to steal anyway, which is, we shouldn't steal, which we'll get to. All right, that's one of the main commandments too. Or say if somebody, if we just dealing with murder, say if somebody, you get into an argument with somebody and they leave and they really don't like what you said to them and they decide to come back and do you some harm, right then and there. They go home and get their weapon and they decide to do you some harm. That is considered murder. All right. Versus if that same person, while y'all arguing, they decide to pull out a weapon on you, and you pull out yours and you defend yourself and they end up dying. That is not necessarily murder. Somebody died, yeah, but that's not necessarily murder. All right, that's somebody dying, but you operating or you committing an act of self-defense right there. Okay, so it's a difference. Unfortunately, somebody dies in a situation, but that is not murder. Versus if somebody decide that they want to do some harm to you because of something you said, they pull out their weapon and they kill you. That is murder. Okay, that is murder. You shall not commit adultery. You should not commit adultery. All right. So adultery for, according to Scripture, adultery for a woman would be her leaving her marriage and having relations with another man. Okay. That would be adultery for a woman. And that would also be adultery for that man that she had relations with because she belonged to somebody else. All right, so that will also be adultery for a man as well because he's having relations with somebody else, a woman that belongs to somebody else. Adultery for a man specifically, though, would be if a man was to divorce his wife without her committing the act of adultery, and he goes and get another wife after he divorces his first wife, and that would be an act of adultery on a man's behalf. All right. At this time, men was having more than one spouse, so it was not adultery for a man to get another spouse. But if he divorces his wife with the intention, without her actually committing adultery, then that right there would be adultery on his behalf, because he divorced her for no reason, and he wasn't allowed to do that. All right, so that would be adultery. You shall not steal. It does not talk about the status of this woman here, but if she was poor, she should ask the store clerk to give her some snacks or food instead of going in and stealing. All right, this law is not, the Most High don't care about your status, whether you have money or not. This law says you shall not steal, and that's what it means. There's no exception with this. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. All right, you should not give false testimony against your neighbor. All right, so first of all, the word neighbor is a word that's dealing with family. All right, it defines family of all sorts, whether it's your son, whether it's your mother, whether it's your father. All right, that is your neighbor according to scriptures. An example, we would see like David committed adultery with Uriah the Hittite's wife Bathsheba, and what was prophesied against him as a punishment was that his neighbor would lay with his wives, would have sex with his wives. And so that neighbor ends up being Absalom, his son. So just to show you that the word neighbor is talking about family of all sorts. All right, and it also can be talking about, like your next door neighbor. When you think about ancient Israel, all of them came out of Jacob, with the exception of those that were a part of the mixed multitude that was Gentiles. All of them came out of David. I mean, not David, I'm sorry, Jacob. Jacob. All of them came out of Jacob. So they was all family, but from different tribes. One, some was from, of course you had those from the tribe of Judah, those from the tribe of Ephraim, Gad, and so forth. But they still would be considered neighbors. And the laws that was given to them by Moses still apply to the whole nation, even the mixed multitude. So committing adultery or bearing false witness against your neighbor or any of these laws applied to all of them, whether they was homeborn or whether they was of the mixed multitude or the stranger. Okay? All right? So, and also when you talk about bearing false witness, when a person witnessed when they witnessed a crime, it took for more than one witness to actually bring a person to the judges. So more than one witness will actually have to see this act going on. All right. So you should not you should not give false testimony against your neighbor. You should not covet anything that belongs to your neighbor. You shall not covet anything. The word covet means to lust after somebody's possessions to the point where it'll lead you to want to steal their possessions, or want to want to kill them to take their possessions. So it leads you to ultimately want to have their possessions. But if you're lusting after somebody's possessions, you'll, at that point, their possessions, once you make the act to take their possessions, those possessions become your God. All right, those possessions become your God at that point. So it's good to keep that spirit intact, because now you're talking about something, lust, that's something that's in your heart, and that's evil. Okay, and if you don't check that and recognize and keep the law in mind that we should not covet anything that belongs to our neighbor, then what'll happen is you'll go astray and you'll decide to take that person's possessions, and that's evil, and that will be you going against the Most High, and that's idolatry, because at that point you allow your desire to have your neighbor's possessions to take over you to the point where you're now willing to do anything, including stealing and murder, to have that person's possessions. Okay. So I'm gonna go into today's topic, and then we're gonna wrap it up. That's the 10 Commandments. Give me 1 second here. Second. So we're going to open up with 1 Kings 20. We're going to read through that whole chapter. That whole chapter is talking about the issue that arose between King Ahab and King Benhadad. Okay, we're still in our split kingdom series, talking about the northern and southern kings, northern and southern kingdom, and what happened to their kings and what happened to the children of Israel as a result of the kings going off. Okay, so 1 Kings chapter 20, we're talking about King Benhadad and King Ahab. King Ahab is the king of the north at this time, and who he's married to? He's married to Jezebel. Okay, 1 Kings 20, we're going to read through that whole chapter. It's going to describe everything that's going on between these two. All right, 1 Kings 20 and verse 1. And Benhadad, the king of Syria, gathered all his hosts together, and there were 32 kings with him, and horses and chariots. And he went up and besieged Samaria and warred against it. So King Benhadad is the king of Syria. He decided to come up against Samaria, which is sometimes the word Samaria is used to represent the northern kingdom. And he decided to war against it and take some of their cities, right? Besieged Samaria and warred against it. And he sent messengers to Ahab, king of Israel, and to the city, and said unto him, Thus said Benhadad, Thy silver and thy gold is mine, thy wives also and thy children, even the goodliest are mine. So these are the things that Benhadad wanted to take away from King Ahab. Wanted to take all his wives, wanted to take his children, the best of his children, and all his silver and gold. All right, verse 4. And the king of Israel answered and said, My lord, O king, according to thy saying, I am thine, and all that I have. And the messengers came again and said, Thus speaketh Benhadad, saying, Although I have sent unto thee, saying, Thou shalt deliver me thy silver and thy gold, and thy wives, and thy children, yet I will send my servants unto thee tomorrow about this time, and they shall search thine house and the houses of thy servants. And it shall be that whatsoever is pleasant in thine eyes, they shall put it in their hand and take it away. So King Benhadad is making a serious effort to oppress the children of Israel, but specifically King Ahab. He want all his wealth, and then he's saying his servants is also going to take all of the valuable things that's in his house. So he's going to allow his servants to get rich off of King Ahab as well. Verse 7. Then the king of Israel called all the elders of the land and said, Mark, I pray you, and see how this man seeks mischief. For he sent unto me for my wives, and for my children, and for my silver, and for my gold, and I denied him not. And all the elders and all the people said unto him, Hearken not unto him, nor consent. So the people of Israel, so look at Ahab. Ahab is saying, I denied him not, meaning that he's going to allow this. But the people, all the elders of Israel is telling him, like, listen, don't hearken to him. You know, Ahab is with an effeminate spirit to the point where he's not willing to stand up to the enemy. The reason that is because he does not have the Most High with him. So he's, of course, quite naturally, if he don't believe in the Most High, if he worshiping other gods, he's not going to have the type of courage that those would have, like King David, like King Jehoshaphat, those that believed on the Most High and know that the Most High comes through for the righteous. He wouldn't have that. So this is why he didn't deny them. But the elders, though it's not clear whether they believe in the Most High or not, at least they're saying don't hearken to King Benhadad, meaning don't give in to him and the things that he's saying, right? Verse 9, I'll start at verse 8, and it says, All the elders and all the people said unto him, Hearken not unto him, nor consent. Wherefore he said unto the messengers of Benhadad, Tell my lord the king, all that thou didst send for to thy servant at the first I will do, but this thing I may not do. And the messengers departed and brought him word again. And Benhadad sent unto him and said, The gods do so unto me, and more also, if the dust of Samaria shall suffice for handfuls for all the people that follow me. So this, what he's saying is, this is just a slick way to say, I'm going to come up against you so bad that there won't even be dirt left once I get through besieging you. This is what King Benhadad is saying to King Ahab. Like, my besiegement is going to be so bad that when I come up against this land, my servants won't even be able to pick up a handful of dirt, right? Verse 11, and the king of Israel answered and said, I tell him, let not him that girds on his harness boast himself as he that putteth it off. And it came to pass, when Benhadad heard this message as he was drinking, he and the kings in the pavilions, that he said unto his servants, Set yourselves in array. And they set themselves in array against the city. And behold, there came a prophet unto Ahab, king of Israel, saying, Thus saith Yahuwah, Hast thou seen all this great multitude? Behold, I will deliver it into thine hand this day, and thou shalt know that I am Yahuwah. So now, when you think about King Ahab was worshiping other gods, but yet the Most High had mercy on him and not delivering him over into King Benhadad's hand. And what he's saying is, like, he sent a prophet to Ahab. I'm going to read this again, because I want y'all to understand that Ahab is not righteous. But though he's not righteous, the Most High, still has his eye on Israel. even him that's not worshiping the Most High at this point, right? And it says, verse 13, it says, and behold, there came a prophet unto Ahab, king of Israel, saying, thus saith Yahuwah, hast thou seen all this great multitude? Because King Benhadad sent a great multitude to besiege Israel. Behold, I will deliver it into thine hand this day, and thou shalt know that I am Yahuwah. Now, the way I see this is the Most High is still making the effort to turn King Ahab's heart toward him, because what he's going to do is perform a miracle by overthrowing this great multitude. So the impossible, the Most High is making it possible. And so what he's doing is he's saying that, hey, this great multitude, you're going to overcome them. Then you'll know that I am Yahuwah, that I am the Lord, I am your God, right? This is the Most High being merciful right here, because he don't have to be merciful. He can give King Ahab and the whole northern kingdom into the hand of this man, but he's not going to do it, right? Verse 14, and Ahab said, by whom? And he said, thus saith Yahuwah, even by the young men of the princes of the provinces, right? So these men that's living in these different provinces in the northern kingdom is who the Most High is going to use. Then he said, who shall order the battle? This is Ahab asking the prophet, who shall order the battle? And he answered, thou. So you're going to order the battle, and you're going to send these young princes against this large host. Okay. Verse 15. Then he numbered the young men of the princes of the provinces. So he got them in their orders. This is Ahab. And they were 232. So only 232 men were ordered to go against this great multitude. All right, remember, we might have talked about Gideon. Gideon only had 300 men to overcome a large multitude of people. Well, Ahab and Gideon was righteous. Look at what the Most High is doing. He's using 232 men, right? And after them, he numbered all the people, even all the children of Israel, being 7,000. So these 232 men had 7,000 men on their side, right? And they went out at noon, but Benhadad was drinking himself drunk in the pavilions, he and the kings, the 32 kings that helped him. Verse 17, and the young men of the princes of the provinces went out first, and Benhadad sent out, and they told him, saying, there are men come out of Samaria. So Benhadad's servants told him that there's men come out of the northern kingdom of Israel to challenge him, right? Because remember, they're besieging Israel. So Benhadad is there with all his men and all the 32 kings that's there to help him. But now that the Most High has given Ahab the word, you have these 232 princes along with 7,000 men that's stepping up to the plate to go against Benhadad and all of his men. All right, so you have Benhadad's servants that's warning him and saying at verse 17, and the young men of the princes of the provinces went out first, and Benhadad sent out, and they told him, saying, there are men come out of Samaria. And he said, whether they be come out for peace, take them alive, or whether they be come out for war, take them alive. So he wanted all the children of Israel to be alive. He didn't want none of them slain. So these young men of the princes of the provinces came out of the city, and the army which followed them. So the 200, this is the young men that's talking about is Ahab's men. And it's talking about how they came out of the provinces. And they slew everyone his man, and the Syrians fled. So when the northern kingdom came out against the southern kingdom, against Syria, the northern kingdom slew everybody that they stepped to fight and war against, right? And so when they did this, the rest of the Syrians fled. And Israel pursued them, and Benhadad, the king of Syria, escaped on an horse with the horsemen. And the king of Syria went out and smote the horses and chariots and slew the Syrians with a great slaughter. And the prophet came to the king of Israel and said unto him, Go, strengthen thyself, and mark, and see what thou doest. For at the return of the year, the king of Syria will come up against thee. So within the next year, so at the turn of the year, rather, I can't say that that's the next year, which is probably like the spring, the king of Syria was to come back and try to overtake them. He was going to try to seek revenge, right? Verse 23, and the servants of the king of Syria said unto him, their gods are gods of the hills. Therefore they were stronger than we. So now they coming with an excuse saying their gods, talking about Israel, talking about the Most High, their God is the God of the hills only. Let's see what else they say. But let us fight against them in the plain, and surely we shall be stronger than they. So they believe that the Most High is only the God of the hills, that he won't be strong in the plain where they deciding to, where they plotting to fight against Israel to overtake them. Verse 24, and do this thing, take the kings away, every man out of his place, and put captains in their rooms, and number thee an army, like the army that thou hast lost, horse for horse, and chariot for chariot. And we will fight against them in the plain, and surely we shall be stronger than they. And he hearkened unto their voice, and did so. And it came to pass at the return of the year that Benhadad numbered the Syrians, and went up to Aphek to fight against Israel. And the children of Israel were numbered, and were all present, and went against them. And the children of Israel pitched before them like two little flocks of kids. But the Syrians filled the country. So now when the children of Israel, when the turn of the year came, the children of Israel were numbered, it says, and were present and went against them, talking about the king of Syria and his men. But the king of Syria and his men was a great host. He had a lot of soldiers, and so his many soldiers, they were so large that it made the children of Israel look like two small flocks of people, right? Even though they had like 7,000 men, that's still a lot, but he had hundreds of thousands probably. So hundreds of thousands, or even 100,000 versus this 7,000 is a lot. Even 50,000 would be a lot to this 7,000, right? Verse 28, and there came a man of Elohim and spake unto the king of Israel and said, thus saith Yahuwah, because the Syrians have said, Yahuwah is Elohim of the hills, but he is not Elohim of the valleys. Therefore will I deliver all this great multitude into thine hand, and ye shall know that I am Yahuwah. So Yahuwah is doing things for his name's sake, because these Syrians, the enemies of Israel, is saying they believe that the Most High is only the God of the plain or of the valley, or excuse me, the Most High is the God of the hills and not the valley. That he's, that they can overtake the children of Israel in the valley. That what the Most High is going to do is going to give this large multitude into the hands of King Ahab and his men, right? Remember, it's only like 7,000. Let's see how many is with them. Verse 29, and they pitched one over against the other 7 days. And so it was that in the seventh day the battle was joined, and the children of Israel slew of the Syrians 100,000 footmen in one day. So the children of Israel slew 100,000 footmen in one day, right? But the rest fled to Aphek, into the city, and there a wall fell upon 27,000 of the men that were left. So 27,000 men fled to a town called Aphek, and a wall fell on them. And Benhadad fled and came into the city into an inner chamber. And his servants said unto him, behold, now we have heard that the kings of the house of Israel are merciful kings, let us, I pray thee, put sackcloth on our loins and ropes upon our heads, and go out to the king of Israel. Peradventure, he will save your life. So they girded sackcloth on their loins and put ropes on their heads, and came to the king of Israel, and said, Thy servant Benhadad saith, I pray thee, let me live. And he said, Is he yet alive? He is my brother. So Ahab said, Is he yet alive? He is my brother. So now that Benhadad his men has been overthrown, he wants mercy. All right, we're going to see that the Most High is not necessarily pleased with this, because the Most High wanted Benhadad dead because he was coming up against the armies of Israel, who he has favor toward. Verse 33, now the men did diligently observe whether anything would come from him, and did hastily catch it. And they said, Thy brother Benhadad. Then he said, Go ye, bring him. Then Benhadad came forth to him, and he caused him to come up into the chariot. And Benhadad said unto him, The cities which my father took from thy father I will restore, and thou shalt make streets for thee in Damascus, as my father made in Samaria. Then said Ahab, I will send thee away with this covenant. So he made a covenant with him and sent him away. So King Ahab made a covenant with Benhadad, that they would be at peace, and that also that King Ahab will be able to make streets in Damascus dedicated to him, just like Benhadad's father made streets in Samaria dedicated to him. All right. Verse 35, and a certain man of the sons of the prophets said unto his neighbor in the word of Yahuwah, Smite me, I pray thee. And the man refused to smite him. All right, so watch this. This is important. All right, so the prophets now, the Most High is about to use one of these prophets to go speak to Ahab. But let's see what he does so that he can communicate with King Ahab. Because the Most High, he has specific ways on how he speaks to his people. And he used ways that really, really stand out. So this prophet now is asking his fellow prophet to smite him, meaning to hit him or do some type of harm to him. And so the prophet refused. Verse 36, then said he unto him, because thou hast not obeyed the voice of Yahuwah, behold, as soon as thou art departed from me, a lion shall slay thee. And as soon as he was departed from him, a lion found him and slew him. So the prophet should have did whatever he wanted, that the prophet wanted for him to do, in order for the lion not to attack him now. And so this word that the prophet spoke about getting smitten, it was from the Most High. The Most High wanted another prophet to smite him, and this prophet refused. All right, so his punishment was that a lion was to come about him and to destroy him, and it did. Verse 37, then he found another man and said, Smite me, I pray thee. And the man smote him, so that in smiting he wounded him. So the smiting was only so that he can be wounded. Now let's see what this prophet that asked for this does with this wound. Verse 38, so the prophet departed and waited for the king by the way, and disguised himself with ashes upon his face. And as the king passed by, he cried unto the king. And he said, Thy servant went out into the midst of the battle. And behold, a man turned aside and brought a man unto me, and said, Keep this man. If by any means he be missing, then shall thy life be for his life, or else thou shalt pay a talent of silver. And as thy servant was busy here and there, he was gone. And the king of Israel said unto him, So shall thy judgment be. Thyself has decided it. So the king of Israel is hearing this parable from the prophet that's been smitten, right? That's been harmed. And the prophet brings this parable to King Ahab, and he's saying, hey, King Ahab, because of what the prophet told him, is saying, well, because of your word, your danger should come to you because of what you said. But this was just to get King Ahab to listen to what he had to say. So the Most High used this prophet, had another prophet to smite him or to do harm to him, so that he can take that, wound to King Ahab and communicate with him, right? And King Ahab now has King Ahab's attention. So let's see what this prophet says to King Ahab. Now that he has King Ahab's attention, and Ahab believed that he should receive some type of punishment based on the parable that he gave. So verse 41. And he hasted and took the ashes away from his face, and the king of Israel, which is Ahab, discerned him that he was of the prophets. Verse 42. And he said unto him, Thus saith Yahuwah, because thou hast let go out of thy hand a man whom I appointed to utter destruction, therefore thy life shall go for his life, and thy people for his people. So that parable was to show King Ahab, like, you should have killed King Benhadad. You became a friend to him when I did not want you to become a friend to him. I wanted you to kill him. All right, so let me read that again. And it says, and he said, this is the prophet, unto him, Thus saith Yahuwah, because thou hast let go out of thy hand a man whom I appointed to utter destruction, therefore thy life shall go for his life, and thy people for his people. Right, so your life shall go for his life, and thy people, meaning Israel, for his people. So you really didn't save your people at all, because you did not kill this man. The Most High wanted him utterly destroyed. Verse 43, and the king of Israel went to his house heavy, meaning he was sad and displeased, and came to Samaria. All right, so when the Most High asks us to do something, that's almost like with King Saul. King Saul was supposed to utterly destroy the Amalekites. He didn't. The Most High punished him by pretty much sentencing him to death, but he didn't sentence him to death right then and there. It just happened over a course of time. Like, he rose up another king, which was David, and then it ended up happening that Saul died later. That's the same thing with King Ahab. King Ahab was unrighteous in not killing this man and not following the word of Yahuwah. And so what happened was, the Most High was sentencing him to death. Like, this thing is going to come to pass because you're not hearkening unto my word. You're not listening to my word. All right. And that's the end of that. King Ahab versus King Benhadad, the Syrian king. I will see y'all next week. I hope you all have a good Sabbath, and hope to see most of you all in here. All right. And I hope we're taking care of ourselves. Let's stay prayed up as we all, face certain things on a day-to-day basis. And you all have a good Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom.